Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fish Tank. My name's BadasFish80 and today have we got some exciting news for you. We're going to go over a lot of the planned changes for the next version of Minion Masters, version 1.26, and let me tell you, things are changing. Now, I am not here on my own. I am joined by the one and only DeathShootOneyOoney. Welcome, Deadshot.
Hello.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to this video.
We have a lot of changes to go over, and this is not by all means all of the changes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, explain a little bit about what's changing, and then maybe talk about maybe why they're changing it. But I've got a document here from BetaDwarf, the developers. So I'm just going to go through their intro, which will be our intro. They've basically given us an overview of what they're changing. Okay, so the team has been closely looking at the game for a while now, and leading up to 2.0, we've been preparing some major changes that we believe can help ongoing issues with the gameplay. We're still a fair bit away from that, but we wanted to get started with these things as we may need time to reconfigure balance to reach a good spot. Additionally, we believe that this will result in a healthier meta. Some of the things we've noticed are that the game seems to have become incredibly reliant on spells, more about that later, and controlling stroke defending until Mana Frenzy, especially in 2v2. We've looked at a bunch of changes that we believe will help sort out some of these issues, as well as make the game more dynamic and action-packed. Now that sounds awesome. Okay, they've asked the question here, why everything at once? We want to do all of these changes in one major patch, as we believe many of these changes will change the meta quite a bit, so we think it's preferable to shake the bag one big time and then concentrate on fixing the issues rather than continuously making changes that will destabilize the balance repeatedly. Now, I've heard from the devs that they think this may be the biggest patch that has ever landed. Okay, so what is our approach from this point on? We certainly expect the meta to be unpredictable with all these changes. We therefore also expect that we will have to do a lot of adjustments. Some will occur in the patches to come in the next few months. Others we'll have to do through hotfixes. As usual, it fully depends on the severity of the issue, whether we choose to hotfix or not, but we will keep an eye on things and are prepared to hotfix where necessary. The overarching goal is then to spend the remaining time before 2.0 to stabilise the meta and find the best balance for Minion Masters Remastered. Okay, Deadshot, are you excited for these changes?
Yeah, I've been playing for almost 3 years now, and this is definitely the biggest patch I've ever seen. The only patch that might have been bigger is when, Master Tower HP used to be 4,000, but I think that this is even bigger than that.
Yep, we got a lot of changes, and let's dive in and talk about them. Okay, so this is going to be patch 1.26. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about here, if we bring it up here on the screen, mana generation increased. So, what we're going to see in 1v1, the starting mana generation is going to be increased by about 10%. And the time to get to the max mana generation has been decreased from 5 minutes to only 3 minutes and 20 seconds. And likewise in 2v2, the starting mana generation is increased by 15%. Here also there's a maximum mana generation increased by 10%, and again the time to get to max generation decreased from 5 minutes to 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So basically you're going to have more mana and you're going to get to more mana even more quickly. How do you feel about these changes, DeathShoot?
They're definitely going to be speeding up the game. Like they said in what you read earlier, that they have felt a lot of Mana Frenzy games lately with these patches. And essentially this is going to, push the game to late game way sooner. 1 minute and 40 seconds of extra Mana Frenzy or extra mana speed. Basically, games won't be going to 10 minutes anymore. It's still possible, but when you talk about the general game, if you're going to talk about a general Mana Frenzy game, it used to be, okay, the game's going to get crazy at around 8 minutes to 7 minutes. Now, if you're going to talk about Mana Frenzy, I think that's going to start happening a lot sooner. And with this increased mana speed, it's going to basically make it to where you're going to have to be more focused. You're not going to be forced into a fast play style because you can still have an expensive deck. You can still have a deck with a mana average of around 4.0. But now when you're playing the game, you're going to have to be a lot more focused, I think.
Yeah, I know we've all been in those situations where you get into a game and straight away you feel like this is going to be a long game and there's nothing you can do. It's basically just do what you need to do until you get to Mana Frenzy, and this is going to reduce the frustration of that. You're going to get to that more quickly. It's going to be more frantic, and that sounds like it's going to be a lot of good fun, a lot of good gameplay. So there we see the mana generation increased. It's going to lead to faster games, more frantic gameplay. So that's a massive change. But alongside that, we're also going to have the XP generation being rescaled. So the passive XP gain is going to be 20% higher, and the bridge XP gain is going to be 10% higher. So that means that you're going to get to your perks more quickly. So not only are you going to have more mana to spend on cards, play cards more quickly, get to Mana Frenzy more quickly, this XP gain is going to mean you're going to get through to your perks more quickly. How do you feel about the XP generation being increased like that, DeathShoot?
So for those who might not know, the original speed was 4 seconds. So that means it's going to be increased by 10% for the bridges, 20% for the Master Tower. And something to note is that this is going to affect Bridge Shrine, which means Bridge Shrine's now more effective because it works with the bridge. When you get XP from the bridge, you get it for Bridge Shrine if the conditions are met. This also means that Bounty Sniper, in a sense, is getting nerfed since you now get XP faster. Not a major nerf, but now that the natural XP is faster and that the bridge XP is faster, this just means that Bounty Sniper getting you that 2 XP, it's basically like everything got sped up, but Bounty Sniper is still going to take the same amount of time. So I think that cards that give you XP are going to be interesting, but also just for general gameplay. Now when you have a deck that's based around like a perk 3 or a perk 2, like King Puff, for example, he's currently based around his perk 2. Now, I said currently because you'll see more about that later on, but currently he's based on his perk 2, and so you want to get that as soon as possible. So I think this is a big buff to perk 2 masters, but also perk 3 masters.
Yeah, so we've seen that you're going to get mana more quickly, and you're going to get XP more quickly. Now, there are certain things, as Deadshot was mentioning there, some of the cards are going to interact with those changes better than others. Some are going to get, if they're not changed, they're going to become far stronger. So what we're going to have a look at here is just, this is by no means an exhaustive list of balance changes, but this is just a few things that we've picked out, and there should probably be a second video, maybe tomorrow, which is going to have specific details about the balance changes. So we just go through here one at a time. We've got the movement speed change, and I know we were speaking about this a bit earlier, DeathShoot. You were thinking that they're no longer going to have any 2-speed minions. Is that correct?
Yes, because with 2-speed minions, they're very easy to support, and now that you have faster mana gain, I think that the devs want those minions to cross the field faster, and it'll be less frustrating for you to have to wait for those minions to cross before you can handle them.
Yeah, because the slow, when you're new to the game, you feel like the slow minions, that's a negative to the minion, but you actually find out that that's a very big part of their strength. Their slow speed, spawn them deep in the pocket, and then allow you to support it. And with the increased mana generation, you're going to be able to support that even more strongly. So that's why there's going to be some changes to the movement speeds of the slowest minions. Of course, if we're talking about increased mana generation, things that are going to be very cycle reliant, like the Demon Warrior, that's going to be, if it's not changed, that's going to be a straight buff. So I should think we'll see some changes to the way the Demon Warrior is going to work. Again, things like the Accursed Ascension, if you're spending mana more quickly, you're going to get to Accursed Ascension more quickly. So we're probably going to see some changes. Now, we don't have specific information about what these changes are, but we should be able to get all that information in the next video. Now, again, we've got changes to the Mancers, the Spirit Mancer and the Blast Mancer. They are, especially in 2v2, very strong cards, so we'll look at see how they're going to be adjusted. We've got Call to Arms, so things like Call to Arms, you're going to be able to get more buildings out because you've got more mana, so that's going to require an adjustment. Dragon's Nest, again, you're going to be able to cycle through, get more spells out, more value from that. And an interesting thing that DeathShot was mentioning to me earlier, and perhaps he can go over it here, is how faster mana affects masters differently, whether they have a perk that's on a timer or whether they have a perk that's based on a cycle.
Yeah, So take Morelia and Diona, for example. Diona has two cycled perks, a perk 1 and a perk 3. If both these masters get to Mana Frenzy, then it's going to benefit Diona more than Morelia, because Morelia, her only perk that isn't one time. She has a perk 3. A perk 3 only happens once, but a perk 1/perk 2, Morelia's book, that is on a timer. So when you get into a Mana Frenzy battle with these two masters, in a sense, the Diona has an advantage, because Diona's perks are getting benefited by the increased mana speed. So now with this change, where mana is going to be faster in both game modes, this is a buff to all perk cycled masters, which do have a lot of them. I'm not going to name them all because there's a lot. But now these masters are going to get their perks even faster. So that means that the perk timer perk masters like Morelia and Meloine, they are both going to be weaker from this, so that they might receive some changes, not all of them, but there's going to be a lot of balance coming in these future patches, and a lot of it's going to be master based.
Yeah, so basically just to add on to that, the increase in mana is going to have a lot of knock-on effects to cards and perks and things like that, so they're all going to have to try to be brought into line and balance, and that's what a lot of this is. So again, we've got Nirvir's Breath here. Again, that's something that's a super strong card in the meta at the moment, likely to see some adjustments. And the Mana Surge mechanic at the bottom there. Remember, Mana Surge, once you've got 6 mana or more, your Crystal Elf units get their Mana Surge. So if you've got more mana coming through, it's probably going to be a lot more easily achievable to get that Mana Surge and to hold that Mana Surge. So that's likely to be addressed so that doesn't become overpowered. Any final thoughts you would like to add to this part of the discussion, DeathShoot?
These changes are mostly a sneak peek of what's to come, because there's going to be a ton of balance changes up ahead, and these ones are some of the bigger ones, like, the things that benefit the most from mana increase, like a curse getting to a curse ascension sooner, mana surge getting mana faster. So there's going to be a lot of changes in the next patch, and this is just a sneak peek of some of the bigger ones.
Okay, so we're seeing some big changes here, and the big changes are not over yet. I hope you're sitting comfortably. Our next change, flying minions. Flying minions will no longer be able to convert a bridge to your team. You can no longer bridge grab with bats or anything like that. So the nature of flying units is going to change. And whether you include them in your deck or not is definitely going to have some interesting discussions regarding that. So how do you feel about this change, DeathShoot?
It's mostly going to be a nerf to cheap flying minions. Like, if you've been playing the game recently, I'm sure you've noticed how, not you, Fish, but, people in general. If you've been playing the game recently, then I'm sure you've noticed how bats have been a very popular card recently. They're going to be receiving a nerf from this because their biggest play is to capture the bridge. They have a lot of randomness to them, but that's like their solid play, a bridge cap. So they're probably going to be receiving changes. There's a lot of cheap flyers that are going to be receiving changes from this. I won't go into any details, but there's going to be, this is a big nerf to cheap flyers. If you're playing something like Harbinger, you're not playing Harbinger for bridge control. But if you're playing a card like Propeller Scratch, that's a bridge control card. So those cards are going to need to be balanced around this change.
Yeah, that's right. So they're going to lose a huge part of their usability. So that's if they're going to be still included, they're likely to need to be strengthened up in other areas. And how do you feel that this change is going to change gameplay and deck building in general?
I kind of like it, to be honest, personally, because I think it's going to be more solid, so to speak. But your anti-air is now going to not have to worry about cheap air units as much. That's one of the reasons why they made this change, from what I've heard, is because that way you don't feel pressured to have a cheap range to answer cheap anti-air. I think that, in a sense, it's going to personally increase the cost of deck building, and that melee minions are definitely getting buffed by this, because flying minions are a main counter to melee minions, and if this reduces their play, then that just means melee minions are stronger.
Yep, so that's a huge change. That will take a little while to get used to. If you've been playing the game for a long time and you've got that muscle memory and your brain just assumes that these things do these things, it'll take a little while, but change is always exciting. And I know some people have felt that the game's got somewhat stale in some scenarios, and changes like this will definitely help to make things more exciting. Okay, so there we have flying minions can no longer grab bridges. We're not finished yet. There's more to come. Okay, there's going to be a general damage in spells nerf. Now, if you've played the game recently, we've heard people refer to this game as spell masters because spells have become incredibly strong, and with it, the masters that benefit from the spells the most. So there is going to be an overall damaging spell nerf. That's going to be generally either a mana cost increase, or where appropriate, the mana cost is going to stay the same and the efficiency of the card, the spell, will be reduced. And one of the reasons they've said that is we want to put more focus on minion versus minion interaction and give spells a more supportive role. How do you feel about this change, DeathShoot?
It's definitely gonna. Right. So first, to starters, I would like to tell people that not every spell in the game is being changed. That would be insane. But there are a lot of damage spells that are being changed, and some AoE spells. But you can expect a ton of nerfs, and this change right here, this is the big reason why there's going to be a ton of nerfs next patch. This is the core reason, in my opinion. You got the mana speed increase, but a ton of spells are going to be changing here, and it's going to bring out more vulnerable units into play rate. Like Fire Imp, for example. If Fireball is going to be 5 mana, then that means that Fire Imp will be more playable. Or if Beam were to go to 8 mana, then that means you could start playing Harbinger more, because then Beam would have to be a negative trade to take out Harbinger. These are some examples, not things that are going to be happening, so to speak. And so I think that there might be more backline units that we haven't seen recently coming out because those spell counters have been nerfed.
Yeah, that's exciting to see because, as we were discussing earlier before this video, there's a lot of cards that you feel, if you've got them in your deck and your opponent has a specific card to counter it, you just feel like that card's completely locked out. You know you're going to spawn it, you know they're going to Arcane Bolt it, boom, they probably going to get a good mana trade. But hopefully this is going to make people... Spells are still going to be usable, but they're as they said here, they're going to be more of a supported role. And with them being more expensive, you're going to have to think more about your trades. You know, this game at its core is about trading mana efficiently, and if you're going to use spells instead of minions, then you're more expensive spell, you're going to need to think about the interactions and the mana costs involved. So again, a big change, and a big change that I think a lot of you out there are going to be very welcome of.
And there's also one more thing I would like to bring up.
Yep.
And that's that spells, a ton of spells are being nerfed. So if there's a spell that doesn't get nerfed, in essence, that spell will be being buffed because its counterparts are being nerfed. So you might see some spells that aren't getting changed, but they're getting buffed because the other spells around them are now weaker. That's something I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, again, something that we were speaking about earlier is how a balance is not something just about a card on its own. It's about that card and its interactions with all the other things that it might interact with. So that's
Right.
why it's such a hard thing to get the balance right, because you make something weaker and then that makes something stronger, and there's this huge detailed interaction. So that's why it's such a, excuse the pun, balancing act to try to get the game as balanced as possible. Okay, so we've seen some big changes there with spells generally getting nerfed. Now, still more changes to come. We've got some master rework changes. So here we have King Puff is going to receive a complete rework. Now, one of the main reasons for this is they feel that the King Puff is far more restrictive than other masters when it comes to deck building options. You know, it's built around its 4 and 5 mana cards from its King's Buff perk 2. So we're going to see a complete rework of King Puff to make it more flexible. We see here Mordar's going to have some reworks to the tombstones. Now, if you played Mordar, especially with a heavy Mordar deck, you know the difference between getting a tombstone res and just missing it can be the difference between winning and losing. So they're trying to adjust the way that the tombstones work to be less coin flippy. So you're not going to have a huge res or a huge miss res. So hopefully that will make Mordar more balanced overall. And
if I could pop my head in here for a minute, I would like to note on the King Puff change that a complete rework doesn't mean that everything's being changed. Like, it doesn't mean its basic attack and all 3 perks are being changed. It just means that the core of the master is being changed. But it doesn't mean that he's completely different. Like his visuals might not get reworked, his basic attack might stay the same, a few perks might stay, but a complete rework in this sense means that what you build around him is going to change fundamentally.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so we've seen the King Puff rework that's coming. Again, we should have more details about that soon. The Mordor Tombstones. Now, Diona's going to be rebalanced. So, Diona's going to have the potion randomness removed, and the trap bridge control also removed. So, Deathshot, would you like to tell us a little bit about those two things?
Yeah, the potion randomness I'm kind of glad about. This means that he can't get like 3 healing potions in a row, which can save games kind of ludicrously. But it also means that both players can now play around the potions if you pay attention to it. Like health potion, I think is the best example here because it's the most effective in a tight match. So let's say that your opponent knows your potion cycle. That means that they can predict when your healing potion is going to come out, so that they can stop it, and then it'll help their chances to win. And I think that this is better than just randomly getting potions whenever. It's nice to have an order of things that you can base around. And for the trap changes, I'm not going to give any details, but this isn't a straight nerf. There will be changes with this. Removing the bridge control aspect of the traps is a pretty sizable nerf for the traps, but they will be receiving changes to be vague, and that will hopefully balance out the removal of bridge control.
And then the last master rework here is the APEP totem. Now that's going to be put onto a timer instead of being a cycle. And as we spoke about earlier, we were talking about how the different perks, whether it's a timed perk or a cycle perk, how that's going to be impacted with the mana generation increase. So this is basically to try to prevent the cheap cycle decks being able to get their totem out constantly for APEP. So how do you feel about this change, DeathShoot?
I think it's a very healthy change because if you're playing a really cheap APEP deck, your opponent's trying to spell you down. Like, there's a lot of APEP decks that are based around late game strategies where you sacrifice early game strength, like Future President or Demon Warrior. That's the most common stuff. And with APEP Totem, you can cycle it at such a pace to where you get another one before your first one dies. And it can just get you to such an invulnerable state that your opponent can't do anything about it. And so I think that this change is going to be very healthy for the game, because now when APEP's playing a really cheap deck, or when APEP's in late game where the mana picks up really fast, the totem isn't going to be like a game stopper save. It's going to be super reliable, but you can't just put all your weight on it to stay away from that, whatever they have to finish the game.
And I think it's healthy to see arguably the two strongest masters right now, Mordor and APEP, receiving some rework, especially with the other changes, to bring them more in line with the strength of all the other masters, to stop them being quite so OP. So that's going to be definitely healthy for the game. Okay, so we covered a lot there. Now let's just go very briefly over what's just to remind ourselves. So mana generation is going to be increased in both 1v1 and 2v2. So not only are you going to get more mana, you're going to get more mana more quickly. So you're going to get to max mana generation even more quickly than currently. And not only that, XP is going to increase. So you're going to get through your perks and to Mana Frenzy more quickly. The game's going to be more frantic, and the overall matches are going to be quicker. There's going to be a bunch of balance changes. We alluded to a few of the changes, but a lot of the cards, especially those that benefit from these changes, are going to be balanced, and we should have a follow-up video to this where we can talk about the specific changes to the cards that are coming. Bridge grabs from flying units, no longer. Flying units can no longer grab bridges. That's a huge change. That's going to change gameplay within the match, and it's going to change thought processes when it comes to building a deck, sorry, not a bridge. Damage spells, there's going to be a general nerf to those, either through mana cost or efficiency. So that's a huge change. And then we've got the master reworks. We've got an overall rework to King Puff. Mordor Tombstones going to be reworked. Diona's going to have some changes, less RNG with the potions, and no bridge control from the traps. And the APEP totem is going to be timed instead of cycled. So, massive changes, DeathShoot. Are you excited?
Yeah. I'm very excited. I haven't been this excited for a patch in a long time. It's so big that it's sort of unnerving, but personally I find it sort of exhilarating because the game's meta has been sort of stale for a bit in 1v1, but this is the biggest change that the game has ever received, changing the fundamentals of the game on multiple factors. It's going to be very, very fresh to experience, and I am super excited for it.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to change, a lot of habits to get out of, and new things to try to get your head around. So we've given you as much information as we've got at the moment. As I say, we should hopefully get the patch notes maybe within the next day, which will show the specific changes to cards, so we can go through those. And as we alluded to, there's likely to be a lot of those. So this is maybe a part one of the overview video, but a massive thanks to DeathShoot for helping me out putting this together. He's very, very knowledgeable when it comes to this game, a huge experience both in ladder play as well as within tournaments.
No problem.
And I really appreciate that. So let us know in the comments, what do you think of these changes? Which are you most excited about? Which are you a bit unnerved about? Yeah, let's have a discussion about that. And stay tuned, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. Make sure the bell is on so you get notified when the next video drops with the patch changes. But my name is Bad as Fish. This is the Fish Tank signing out. See you guys soon.